And then when you get to the bottom here, on every page, you're going to find personal resources for you. So if you're looking to start a business in Whatcom County, we wanted to highlight those that have the most expertise in that particular service. So CJ is with the Small Business Development Center. You can email her directly. You can click and get to their webpage. Diane from Northwest Innovation Center. I think we're still looking for a photo here for SCORE, but SCORE's sole business is helping people start. Oops, okay. As you scroll down, you'll see key industries, and felt it was important to specify some industries that that do well here, and so we did that. And remember, this is for all of Whatcom County, so you'll see many of these are obvious to Bellingham, but agriculture, obvious. We don't have the farming here, but we certainly do in the county. This is a key feature to the site. We have Dodd here today, and if you want to just say hello. Dodd Snodgrass is with the Port of Bellingham. The Port of Bellingham is the ADO, or Associate Development Organization. And so we felt that it was very important if people got to this page that they had somebody to reach, and so there is a direct link to the Port of Bellingham. And Dodd and his team will keep track of everyone that inquires and make sure that they get the resources they need, and then follow up with those businesses or inquiries. That is next, right here. Each one of these industries, I'm not going to play for sake of time, each one has a video, and they all have it. I couldn't pick just one to show you anyways, because they all have such different messages. This, as we had to highlight beer at this point in time because of its strength here in Bellingham and Whatcom County, but you see Oslin, and also pictured with them is the Kempers from Chuckanut Bay Brewery, and their story is really about community and sharing each other's resources and working together. It's a good story. Oslin, both of these actually chose to come here to Bellingham and start these businesses here. Then on the resources, each of the pages has resources. I wanted to here highlight incentives because you're all familiar with the wonderful package of incentives available to Bellingham. Those are highlighted on this site. We are trying to get that message out in our community, as well as some of the other incentives available to businesses in Washington State. Then Faith Life is highlighted here on the technology page. And also on each one of these sectors, when you scroll down, you're going to see members of Team Whatcom that specialize there. So that's Meg Weber with the Technology Alliance Group. Then I also wanted to highlight, I think we don't take for granted the educational opportunities that we have available here. But it is pretty impressive that not only we have this four-year university, but we have excellent resources with having the community college here and a technical college. Trinity Western has a presence here, as well as the Northwest Indian College. So that is something that businesses are looking for, is communities that have strengths in education. Then I wanted to highlight Maritime because of our focus on our waterfront district. This is Matt Mullett with All American Marine. I do encourage you to check out all of these videos. As you are probably aware, All American Marine's in Fairhaven, and they have outgrown their facility located on port property, and the Port of Bellingham has helped them, and they have, I know, just secured contracts to build them a new building in the Marine Trade Center. And so this is helping a company stay here in Bellingham and be able to grow here. And then again, here's the free help button to get you to Dodd. There's a whole list of Team Whatcom members that you can scroll through. You can pick a category and those that are focused in that area. But I'll just scroll down here. Oops, sorry. You can kind of see the number of people that are here to help businesses grow and locate here in Whatcom County. So that's just a little overview. The event was successful. I think it was standing room only, the Pickford. I know the Community and Economic Development Committee attended that event. Thank you very much. So check out this when you have a few moments. ChooseWhatcom.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Any questions? Roxanne.
Well, I think this is exciting because there are ways that we need to show that we need the businesses to develop throughout our county and especially in our cities so we can get more jobs and we can get people to have higher incomes. We obviously also received some feedback, the council members did, about the fact that there weren't any diverse people that were in the photographs on this website. But I just had a potentially middle ground idea on how to address that. I just think, as a member of the Nooksack Indian tribe, two major employers aren't highlighted as much on this site, and so maybe you can incorporate the tribes as a part of the economic engine, and so that could satisfy some of these diversity concerns.
And Dodd and I have already had a couple conversations about that. That was good feedback. We're actually just, please bring that feedback to us. We were just, really just trying to hone down who we were highlighting. I mean, we have thousands of wonderful businesses here, so there was lots of dialogue on that, but I'd welcome a conversation with you about how to do that. Thank you.
No. Anybody else? Terry?
No, except for that comment, which I've heard as well. I think you did a really good job on this. It looks really good. It presents well. It's something that's been needed. And yeah, I'm pleased to see the way it's unfolded.
Thank you. Thank you very much. End of committee. Mm-hmm. They did.
No break needed? Okay. So we're going to continue on with Committee of the Whole. We have 5 items before us today, and we are about 35 minutes behind, so I'm going to try and expedite us as much as possible. The first item today is the Northwest Clean Air Agency is going to present on their new website. The City of Bellingham partnered with Whatcom County and, wait, I'm on the wrong page, nothing. One moment, we'll let everybody get ready. Are we still waiting? What's that? I thought we were ready. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll just give a little overview while there's the Northwest Clean Air Agency will present its new website and discuss how it supports the agency mission and needs of different audiences. And I believe the presentation is going to be given by Katie Skipper. Katie? Hi, Katie. We'll give you a minute here to get up. And Brian, did you want to do an introduction?
I can briefly. Brian Heinrich, Mayor's Office. I just wanted to point out on the agenda bill under the fiscal impact, it lists, I believe it's $28,000 or something like that. I want to just clarify that's the annual dues that the city pays to the Northwest Clean Air Agency. It's not the, at least we did not pay for the website development. However, we are a dues-paying member to the organization, and I do serve at the mayor's pleasure on the Northwest Clean Air board of directors, so I've worked with Katie a little bit. She's given this presentation to the board there. They've done a fantastic job of doing their website. So you'll hopefully notice some similarities between what Vanessa Blackburn in the mayor's office has done with the city's website. And so I'll turn over to Katie.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
As Brian said, I'm Katie Skipper. I'm the Communications Program Manager for the Northwest Clean Air Agency, and I'm really excited to be here to talk about our new website. And it's a great day for us to talk about the new website for our agency because it is the beginning of Air Quality Awareness Week, and this tool will hopefully bring more awareness to local air quality and issues. Okay, good. Before I get started, though, I just wanted to say a brief word of congratulations to the City of Bellingham because the American Lung Association's 2016 State of the Air Report is out, and Bellingham is one of only 8 cities in the entire country to rank as cleanest for both ozone and short-term particle pollution. So we're really excited about that at the Northwest Clean Air Agency, and we think you guys should be too.
I am.
So how's air quality? This is our old website. I have no idea when I look at this website how the air quality is. So maybe if you go over here to air quality, not getting any better, is it? So we thought it was a pretty big problem that the local air agency's website made it difficult to find out what air quality is. And there is a strong interest in knowing what our air quality is. We know this because, I don't know if you guys remember, but last year when the wildfire smoke rolled in, we're not used to that kind of air quality around here, and people didn't know what to do. And so because they weren't able to get it from our website, they did what we would expect them to do, and they went to Facebook. To that point, the most eyeballs on a post at the Northwest Clean Air Agency was 400, and that was our deputy director getting a bucket of ice water dumped on his head because he took the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. The first post about that wildfire smoke got 19,000 views. So we had a pretty clear idea that we needed to do something differently. And so that kind of started the ball rolling, figuring out what we needed this website to do. We looked at analytics. We interviewed key stakeholders and staff. We put a survey out to the public, a very unscientific survey. And the 3 main things that we decided that we really needed this website to do were, 1, communicate what air quality is here. And generally, it's excellent. And when it's not, we wanted to make sure people knew what to do about it. We also wanted to make sure people could find what they needed. How else are people going to know how to comply with air quality regulations if they can't find the tools and the information they need? So that was our second big thing we wanted it to do. And the third thing we wanted it to do was to inspire confidence that the Northwest Clean Air Agency is doing a really good job to protect air quality. We're doing what we need to do. So those were the three big ones for us. So air quality is excellent. Well, now when you go to the Northwest Clean Air Agency's website, you can immediately see how your air quality is doing. You can scroll through the monitors in the different monitoring locations. You'll see a familiar scene that's near each one of our monitoring gauges. You can customize the site, so you put your zip code in, you log in, and the site will open to the monitoring location that's nearest you. And I like to say that the difference between the old site and the new site is night and day, but also the images change from night to day. So if you're looking at it during the daytime, you get a daytime image. If you want to take a deeper dive into air quality, you can click on the Air Quality Center. And this is where you're going to see all of the pollutant and weather information at each of the monitoring locations. You can get data snapshots, day, week, month, for the pollutant at that location, or pollutants, because some of the monitoring locations monitor for different pollutants. You can go to the monthly air quality summaries for both ambient community monitors or the monitors that are on the fence lines of some of the facilities we regulate. And you can sign up for text or email alerts about burn bans and air quality issues that might be going on. If you go into the monthly ambient air quality reports, you'll see a graph that looks like this. This is how EPA looks at air quality in terms of standards. So for particulate, it would be averaged over a 24-hour period. It's not just the data snapshots. There are different calculations that go into these monthly summaries. You can look at all of the monitoring locations together, or you can toggle them on and off, and maybe you just want to look at Bellingham. If you scroll down a little bit, you'll see thumbnails that look kind of like this. If you click on one of them, it'll expand the view of that particular pollutant. Also in the Air Quality Center, we have a map of where all of our monitoring locations are, and they're color-coded, so if it's anything but good, the pin at that location will change color. And if you don't know what the heck the colors mean, there's a table that tells you what the colors mean, and you can click on tips to see what to do about it to protect your health for each of the pollutants at that location in that category. The second main thing we wanted the site to do was help people find what they need. So we developed a permits and services page. This is the meat and potatoes of the agency. Most of what we do, people are going to be able to find right here. There's this green ticker of kind of the latest activity and the number of businesses that we regulate. If you click on one of these buttons, you'll go to the latest monthly activity report for the agency. A little further down are the tiles for each of the main areas of the agency. If somebody wants to explore major businesses in their community, major businesses are the ones that, for the most part, are the ones that release the most pollutants. They're required to be regulated under Title V of the Clean Air Act. There's some other smaller ones that are exceptions to that. But you can go to the major businesses page. And this is one of my favorite features on the page. You can click on a pin that locates where the facility is, see what the facility is, the permits that it has, and from our annual emissions inventory, you can see the emissions that facility is releasing. If you prefer the old-fashioned list view, you can click on the list icon, which the developer calls the hamburger, which I think is hilarious. And the list of all of the major facilities will appear. Let's take a look at the non-major businesses section. This is the part of the website where we think our most transactional audience is going to go. These are the people who need something from us or who need to submit something to us. But it also has to satisfy the curious information seeker, the people who want to know about what these businesses mean to the agency and air quality. So we have a description of what a non-major business is and a list of what some of those business types are. But let's say I'm a spray coater and I want to know what it is I'm supposed to be doing for permits and registration. I click on that big green button right there. I go to a series of toolkits for general and specific business types, expand the toolkit that I'm interested in, and there's hopefully everything I need. The last thing we wanted the site to do was to inspire confidence. And in terms of a website, the best way you can inspire confidence is to provide people with information in a clear and intuitive manner, because the last thing you want to do is spend forever hunting around on a website to find a form that you don't really want to fill out anyway. So we think we've done a pretty good job with that. On top of that, there's a ton of research about the power of visual communications. There's a reason why people go to Instagram, and there's a reason why people go to YouTube. People find connection emotionally through visual forms of communication, and so we thought it was really important to connect with the people we serve in this community through a video. So I'd like to share the video with you now, if that is okay. It was produced by Hand Crank Films, and it's going to live in this prominent spot on our agency's website. And I'm hoping the internet works. We'll see. Yes, okay, so here's the live site. And looks good. There. If there was no air pollution, if there was no exhaust, regulate, then we wouldn't need to be here. And wouldn't that be wonderful?
Air is invisible, and we take it for granted, and yet it surrounds us every day. And every day you have to breathe where you are, which for us means that the air has to be clean everywhere, all the time.
We all share the air, and what we put in the air is consumed by the people around us. Limiting what those pollutants are is the single most effective way to improve public health.
The Northwest Clean Air Agency preserves and protects the air quality for all the folks in our jurisdiction.
We encourage businesses through both partnerships, and regulatory means to maintain that air quality.
We have respectful relationships with the businesses here in our jurisdiction. These are people that want to live in this beautiful place. They don't come here to work. They come here to be a part of our community, and they want to protect it too.
No one should suffer from poor air quality. Nobody should have to struggle to breathe. Nobody should have to stay in their home. That's my big motivator. That's why I care.
It's something that we can do to make people's lives better. And it's something that encourages me to come to work every day.
When I look at my daughter and I think about all the effort I make to help her grow up happy and healthy and to make good choices in her life, I think about the air that she's breathing. And I feel really lucky that we have some of the best air quality in the entire country right here.
I think about those moments where you take a deep breath and you may be in your backyard or you may be at the Cascades hiking somewhere. I think about how important clean air is to that moment. That's what brings us to work every day to make sure that the air stays clean. And it's what we do.
So that is our new website, and if I can figure out how to get back to the screen's too big. One other note I wanted to make about the new website is that if you're used to looking for us at nwcleanair.org, we're not there anymore. We have moved to a .gov domain, which is something that came about as part of the whole development of the website. We realized we were hearing some confusion about whether we were a government or not. People thought we were a nonprofit because we were .org. So we made the big move, and it is no small task to get that .gov domain, but we have it, and we're now at nwcleanairwa.gov. So no confusion anymore. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Katie. And yes, this new website is night and day. It's pretty phenomenal. Much different experience. Councilmember Murphy.
I just really wanted to express my support with a very brief story. I went for a power walk around Lake Padden and got home and for some reason felt very sick. And it wasn't until after the exercise that I realized that the air quality was extremely dangerous because we were having wildfires. They were distant, but they were affecting our air quality. That got me thinking about the people who suffer from major respiratory issues. I was massively concerned about those people. So, of course, I tried to do my Facebook outreach about it, pointing to the website that used to be rather scientific looking rather than inviting and, immediately available information. And so I just really appreciate this. So I actually would like to make a motion, because we have so many community elders and such an extensive recreation community, outdoor recreation community, that we could do outreach about this in any applicable measure to our citizens. So if it's a mayor's outreach or if it's a news release or whatever it is, but just community outreach about this improved website.
So we can, yes, we can do something like that, and we'll just pass that on to Vanessa.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. What role does the agency have with regard to indoor air quality in people's houses or businesses, inside the business? Not like producers, like paint fumes or something.
For many years, the Northwest Clean Air Agency has operated an indoor air quality program. It's completely without any regulatory authority at all. It's been primarily a support and information resource. The expert in indoor air quality is retiring, and we're all really sad to see him go. His name is Dave Blake, and he has been with the agency for a long time. What we're attempting to do is transition his wealth of knowledge and information to an online resource. We have some of his information collected on the website right now, but the program as we have known it is going away.
Councilmember Barker.
I've been to several neighborhood association meetings as well as when we went to go educate Western Washington University students about the rental registration. And yeah, it's going to be quite a resource loss for him to retire, but I hope you guys are able to capture it because each time I learned so much about the simple things I was doing to ruin my own air quality in my house. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Council members, any other questions, thoughts? No? I think it's a great idea for us to do outreach on this, and maybe we could also put a link to this on our new Choose Whatcom website for air quality.
That'd be great. And I just wanted to point out on our homepage that we do have a news release about the new website that you can link to as well that gives some highlights about why we did it and some of the features too.
And I also wanted to say thank you to the Northwest Clean Air Agency, who is doing some funding for the Bellingham Energy Prize and the Anacortes Energy Challenge. So the Northwest Clean Air Agency is very supportive of doing wonderful projects, and we thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Thank you very much, Katie.
Thanks.
A second item in front of us today is a preliminary findings regarding the city's commercial zoning code. We have a presentation from the graduate students from the University of Washington's Department of Urban Design and Planning. And they're conducting a preliminary review of the city's commercial zoning code. As part of this effort, they have conducted a series of focus group sessions in order to receive feedback from a variety of perspectives. 6 different focus groups were formed and were grouped as follows. City staff, ladies, you can come on down to and get ready for your presentation if you'd like to. 6 different focus groups were formed and were grouped as follows. City staff, city administration, public officials, community groups, land use professionals, and business owners, commercial real estate brokers. The graduate students intend to present and summarize their findings from these sessions. And I'm going to let everyone just take a moment to get all our technical challenges out of the way. And I'm going to turn it over to Rick Sepler, our Director of Planning and Community Development.
Okay, members of the council, good afternoon. You know, it's a perfect timing after looking at the Choose Whatcom website to be before you today. In the Choose Whatcom website, we look to start or grow or relocate businesses to Whatcom County. One thing they might all have in common is when they look at our commercial zoning, they leave somewhat befuddled. That was an issue that was identified by... That was an issue that was identified by a number of points. Our zoning, it's not the standards, it's the complexity of how it's presented. And in looking at that from our department's aspect, our work program this year said, can we look at our commercial zoning and can we find a way to preserve the high standards we maintain and desire as a community, but wish to find a way to simplify the processes and clarify the intent that we have in the code itself. In looking at all 3 divisions across planning and community development, when asked what would be the heavy lift, what could be the game changer we could give to the community as a major project, they said if we could clarify zoning, not so much change the standards, not so much lessen it, not so much add additional standards, but clarify it so that someone coming in has less of a research project and more definitive answers before them, we have provided good service to the community, and that would nest closely with the idea beforehand. In doing that, we reached out to the University of Washington's graduate program and said, can we find an independent source that could come forward that has the technical skills and backgrounds to assess those issues that really are causing that kind of collision between our intent to provide clear guidance and our processes created over many years that are somewhat overlapping and confusing. I'm joined today by a team from the University of Washington's graduate program in urban design and planning, and they're going to give you an update of a process that they initiated to survey some of the issues with the commercial zoning code and to lead ultimately to come back before you with suggested recommendations, not a rewrite of the code, more of a roadmap of things we could do to help clarify it.
Thank you, Rick. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Elise Keim, and I am joined by my colleagues Sinshang He and Jen Lambrick. We, along with a team of 4 other University of Washington planning graduate students, have been taking a critical look at Bellingham's commercial zoning code with a plan to make potential recommendations to revise this code. After conducting some background research on the community to better understand the challenges and opportunities facing Bellingham, we engaged a series of stakeholder focus groups. We identified parties who interacted and are impacted by the commercial zoning code most often, and these focus groups were designed to gather feedback regarding the operation and effectiveness of the current commercial zoning code from these various perspectives. The focus group process was chosen because we felt it's the best way to gather the most diverse opinions in a short timeline. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jen, who will discuss the purpose of our project.
We are not rewriting the zoning code. We are here to provide a roadmap of where the Bellingham commercial zoning code can go next. Ultimately, we will provide alternative approaches to zoning that address the challenges created by the code in its current state. We'll continue.
Thanks, Jane. During this year, April, we start our 6th focus group, including city planning staff, public officials, including council members, planning commission members, part of Bellingham staff, and the city administration, which include planning department staff, people work for public works and city attorney. Community focus group, which includes representatives from each different neighborhoods, land use professionals, including architects and consultants, and business owners and commercial developers, including the Chamber of Commerce. Each group was asked a set of questions intended to look at various strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities for improving the overall commercial zoning code. The students came up with questions based on some common themes. These questions were designed to be value neutral so we could ensure honest feedback from different participants. For example, in what capacity are you interact with commercial zoning code? What is your experience? How would you measure the success of the code? In what way has the Bellingham's commercial zoning code impacted you and your community? Besides these general questions, we also have our specific questions for each group regarding their different perspectives. Each focus group controlled in 90 minutes. We have one student conducting each group as a facilitator, and we also have one student taking notes on the flipboard, which is open for people who attend the meeting and make sure we correctly and comprehensively document what they saw and their comments. So now my colleague Elise will introduce the top issues that we find during the process.
Thank you, Sinshang. Based on feedback from our focus groups, we identified a handful of main issues involving the commercial zoning code, as you can see here. The first issue is complexity. The code's complexity was discussed at length in multiple focus groups. Focus groups identified the issue as the ability, or lack thereof, for the code to be understood and navigated. Feedback from multiple focus groups described the code's organizational deficiencies and the challenges both staff and developers face when interpreting the code. The staff want to be able to provide clear, logical answers to the public's questions, but the code's many layers can make this difficult. The next main theme was predictability and flexibility. Multiple focus groups expressed a desire for both. So you see here some dynamic tension in what people want and what is expected of a zoning code. Finding this sweet spot is a common challenge for municipalities. Knowing what types of uses could come to your neighborhood and knowing where in Bellingham you could locate your business are essential to all parties involved. Over the years, Bellingham's code has been changed, patched, and added to, paradoxically resulting in greater uncertainty for both residents and businesses. It has become more complicated with highly specific requirements. The next topic we come to is intent. Based on feedback from those who interacted with the code most frequently, the intent of a given rule needs to be clear and logical so that the reasoning behind code requirements and allowable uses is straightforward. Next, we come to consistency in process. Business owners and developers especially voice their desire for greater consistency in the development process. Timelines and costs can be uncertain in Bellingham since planning staff need to perform some in-depth research projects to answer some very basic questions like, where can I locate my business? This uncertainty is a risk that some businesses can't take, and they'll therefore locate in other communities. Another theme that we came to was the importance of a nexus between community and market interests. Community members voiced their concerns about Bellingham's retail-reliant economy and a desire for more family wage jobs while maintaining the character of their neighborhoods. And the market wants to adapt to changes in the economy but is running up against an outdated code, which limits their ability to expand in Bellingham. Legislative documents are often playing catch-up to both community and economic pressures, so any changes to the commercial code need to be sensitive to this issue. We also received feedback on some positive outcomes of some newer land use regulations. Multiple stakeholders identified the urban villages as a positive force for better design and economic growth in Bellingham. Areas like downtown, Fairhaven, and Barclay Village were held up as examples of successful commercial areas since they are close to their customers and have some better design. Focus groups also identified areas of potential commercial growth like Samish. Design standards were praised for bringing nicer looking buildings and neighborhood groups felt that the neighborhood plans were allowing the expected commercial uses that those plans envisioned. So those are just some of the major areas of feedback that we received from our groups. We have a lot of information to go through, and Jen's going to talk about those next steps.
So at this point, our project is in a research phase. We want to ground truth the findings from our focus groups to make sure that the comments accurately reflect the reality. And using this information, we are exploring possible ways to move forward. We are currently researching comparable communities in different types of zoning, including form-based, incentive, performance, and Euclidean, and we will also consider Bellingham's comprehensive plan to ensure any recommendations are consistent with its goals. And we will present our final recommendations in June, and they'll be based off of the information we learn over this next month. Thank you, and any questions?
Councilmember Murphy.
I just wanted to thank you so much for this information because you guys need to understand we need your help. We are asking people to choose Whatcom to locate their business, but when they get here, if they have these complexities, are they going to invest and are they going to tell their friends to invest? So I just really wanted to thank you, and I look forward to working with you and understanding better ways we can improve it.
Councilmember Barker.
Well, I also wanted to thank you, Rick, because you're our new planning director, although it's been a while, it seems. But you're bringing some really great things like this, and I really appreciate it. And I think you guys are doing a great job. I do. And thank you, Mayor, for such a great hire, because I think we got a twofer having that connection with you, Deb, honestly. I mean, it's resources like this that actually you're bringing to the table, and I'm really thankful for that. So.
Councilmember Boardman.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the presentation today, but I really look forward to seeing the final results of this and look forward to the discussion that should come from those results. And I'm sure it's going to generate some really good discussion and looking at possible changes.
If I might, the students were reporting the outcomes of those focus groups. That's not their opinion.
Right.
And they'll be providing you with a detailed narrative on each of the focus groups so you can see more depth of what came out.
Right.
This is what they teased out from all of the groups. So if that's the perception from independent groups, that must be the perception across the community. So that's what we're starting as. Now we come back with how do you best resolve that? How do you find good tools to address it?
Council members? Anyone else? No, myself too. I would really like to appreciate your coming all the way out here to Bellingham and doing this project for us. And to Rick, this is a huge, heavy lift, and I admire you for taking it on. Thank you.
Nice to see some Huskies in the building.
Yeah.
Finally.
And Vikings.
And a Western.
Yeah, one Viking.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
That was for information only. The third item in front of us today is a resolution in support of the proposed emergency medical services levy. The Bellingham City Council requested the administration draft a resolution in support of the proposed emergency medical services EMS levy and request the Whatcom County Council vote to place the ballot measure on the November 8th, 2016 general election ballot for consideration by the voters of Whatcom County. And I'm going to turn this over to Mayor Kelly and Chief Newbold.
And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Newbold. This has been, in the past, a very controversial issue. Terry and I sat on the EMS restructuring committees that we had, and I wasn't here when we did the first EMS levy, but I know that this one, certainly by anecdote, has more support than the first one did in a more comprehensive way. And that's why I appreciate the City Council looking at this seriously and understanding that good work, I believe, should not go unnoticed. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor Kelly. Good afternoon, Bill Newbold, Fire Chief. And before you today is the resolution to have the EMS recommendations and the 29.5-cent EMS levy placed on the general ballot this November. Part of the RCW requires that cities over a population of 50,000 legislatively pass a resolution to have a countywide measure placed on the ballot in addition to the county council. Here in Whatcom County, that includes just the city of Bellingham and the Whatcom County Council. The resolution before you has three specific items contained in it. The first two, one is the indication of the November general ballot. The second item of the resolution is in support of the 29.5 cent. And the third item is continuation of direction to staff, your staff, to continue to work with the county and developing a ILA to ensure that the funds collected under the EMS levy are used in alignment with the recommendations from the EMS funding work group. Such an ILA is a best practice as putting that forward, and we'll continue to work with the county on that. Just to bring you up to date very quickly from the last time I met with you 2 weeks ago, there has been a couple significant meetings, all in the continuation of what Mayor Kelly Linville talked about this process put together. And at last Monday's EOB meeting, which both Councilmember Terry Borneman and Mayor Kelly sit on, the EOB voted in favor to move this forward. All the recommendations contained in the EMS funding work group, as well as placing it on the November ballot. That sentiment was also echoed last Thursday night by the Countywide Fire Chiefs Association. And I think it's this week or next week, the Countywide Fire Commissioners will be considering a same recommendation. So that's the information I have for you, putting that resolution together, which was drafted with assistance, obviously, from Peter Raffato and his group.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Borneman.
I'd like to move approval of the resolution in support of the proposed emergency medical services levy.
Bill, do you know, we passed this today, it goes to the next step. When is the county council going to consider it?
Can't say exactly. Well, they'll have some discussion on it tomorrow night.
Okay.
And we will be over at that meeting as well. We've been asked to present there as members of the EMS funding work group. I'll be attending that in the evening session, providing some answers and some discussion information on it. So that will be the county's next opportunity to discuss that publicly. What they choose to do, they may choose to give their staff some direction. What that direction may be, we'll find out tomorrow night. And then following that, the last step in the process would be for the county council, should they choose to have a resolution similar to ours, placing that on the November ballot.
Thanks, Bill.
Councilmember Murphy, then Lilliquist.
I just want to say that I'm going to be so happy to support this, and I want to send the message that this is the way that our governments and partner organizations should do business.
I agree. I think this is the solution at the right time. This financial problem has been coming for a while. We've been spending down reserves. At the end of the year, we'll be down to just like a few weeks' worth of money in the reserves. You know, this was seen coming, and this is a solution to solve a long-term problem. We're running out of reserves, and that's with subsidies from the county and from the city of Bellingham into the program. So we can't continue to support to subsidize it. I think it's time for the voters to decide if they're willing to support a program at a more sustainable level. So that's what we're doing. We're putting on the ballot.
Councilmember Barker.
We were at a breakfast for the chambers, and there was the state of the city and the county, and what I heard was the county executive maybe had a different plan of wanting to get the jail first and this last. So I would just suggest that if anybody's out there listening and you do feel strongly about this, I do, so I'll be going and talking to my representatives on the county, but that you might need to really make sure that you stand up and let your county council know that you support this, and so it makes it all the way.
Yeah, at Monday's emergency management oversight meeting, the county exec did present a different idea of wanting this to go to November 2017. The committee decided the mayor made a motion to put it on for this year, and that was the motion that passed by the oversight board as a whole.
Council members, any other comments or requests? Okay. We have a motion in front of us for a resolution of the City of Bellingham approving a countywide ballot proposition for a levy to fund a countywide emergency medical system for the period from January 1st, 2017 through December 31st, 22, and that is to be put on the 2016 ballot, is what we're asking for the County Council. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Fourth item in front of us today is a brief from the 2016 legislative session. And we're going to hear such great news from Tom McBride and Ben Bushels. This is for information only, and this is from McBride Public Affairs.
Good afternoon. Tom McBride and Ben Buchholz here on behalf of McBride Public Affairs. Thanks very much for your time this afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here before you. I want to give you and we'll run through this fairly quickly, and we're happy to take questions along the way, so feel free to speak up if you want to go into more detail about something. But first, it's a pleasure to represent the city in Olympia, and we enjoy it, and we look at it as very important work, and we thank you for the opportunity to work with you. The session in 2016 was, as expected, in really a prep for 2017. And the 2016 session was a short session, 60-day session. Like some past sessions, the legislature did need to go into extra time, overtime, and they went partway into a first special session, about 20 days in. So they met for about 80 days this year. And much of the time, like I mentioned, was in preparation, setting things up for the 2017 budget, which we'll talk about in a moment. It's going to be a big one. The reason they had to go into that extra time was really some disagreements about how to pass the supplemental operating budget for the 2016. And the way that they did it would determine some of the requirements that would take place in 17 and beyond. So they were important decisions, and some people felt strongly, and it took a little extra time to get it done. But they did finish at the very end of March is when they finished. So I also want to say, we want to say to you, thanks for your work, not just in putting together a great legislative agenda, but also your work in helping advance that agenda. And it's done in a number of different ways, as you know. Some of you come to Olympia. Some of you communicate on the phone, via email, via text. There's different ways to help support the city agenda. And all of you have been helpful in that respect. So we thank you for that, because it is helpful. It's very important, as you know, for your legislators to hear from the elected officials in the city. The couple other things to highlight before we jump into some of the specifics. Keep in mind the political margins are in Washington State very tight. We have a Democratic governor and have had one for 34 years or so. So that's been very consistent. But the margins in the House and Senate have become very narrow. The House is controlled by the Republicans 50 to 48, and the Senate is controlled by the Republicans, or the Majority Coalition Caucus, 1 Democrat plus 25 Republicans for a 26 to 23 count. So both of those margins are tight, and as you can imagine, that makes how things move through the process sometimes difficult when one vote could throw something off the rails, so to speak. So interesting alliances develop, et cetera. But it does affect the way these issues get through in terms of policy matters, and of course it significantly can impact budget decisions and revenue matters. So that's important, obviously, as we run into this 2016 election. I wanted to highlight that for you because we don't know exactly what it's going to look like in 2017. I think we can assume that the margins will again be close in 2017. And when you think about the work that's ahead of the legislature, it could make for a long session. I mean, most people think that they won't get done in the long session, 105-day term, but they could go into special session or special sessions to get it done. So we'll see what happens, but the election will help determine how fast that goes along and which direction it goes. One of the big things that you've heard about for years, the McCleary lawsuit out of the Supreme Court and the mandate from the Supreme Court to the mandate on the legislature by the Supreme Court to adequately fund K-12 basic education. The legislature is under sanctions right now for failing to adequately put a plan in place to address that adequate funding, full funding, K-12 basic education. You've heard about it for a number of years, but it's not over yet. Next year is expected to be the big decision time for how that necessary funding gets into place in preparation for the 2018 deadline that's been imposed by the court. So how that's accomplished is up in the air. There are some difficult issues to get through. The levy matter that local school districts are relying upon to address some of their education needs. And so how they solve that $2 to $5 billion gap on a biennial basis, on a recurring basis, will be the big bulk of work in 2017. So all that being said, that's kind of a prelude to a little bit of the summary for you in terms of 2016 issues, and we'll hit these pretty quickly. Like I said, we can come back. Most of these issues here, we've highlighted what you've been interested in and worked on. MOTCA funding was, of course, of critical importance. There are a number of projects in the area that benefit from that MOTCA funding. We don't need to tell you about some of the problems with the MOTCA funding in terms of the source of the funds due to the decrease in the price of oil. Right now, the Department of Ecology estimates the MOTCA shortfall is about $78 million. So the problem there is it forced the readjustment of some of the projects that had previously been queued up for funding. And part of that is because the legislature has to balance the budget over a 4-year plan. So some of those projects that were on the list have had to be put into a delayed status in order to make that budget balance, because they don't necessarily know how much money will come in and how soon it'll come in. There are other ways to try to address the problem. There are proposed tax increases to close the gap, et cetera. But right now, watching the revenue and $121 million worth of projects were put on a delayed status. But right now, the priority is to keep funding projects that are already underway, reappropriate those projects that are already underway. And that's, of course, a concern for our projects here in Bellingham. But it's also good news that that's a prioritization for the legislature. The next one I wanted to give you a heads up about is the local revenue sharing matter. We've talked about that for a number of years, too, whether it comes to liquor revenue sharing or the marijuana revenue sharing, which is new and growing. That's been a threat. As we've seen the budgets and the tight budgets and the lack of adequate revenue to fund all existing programs in the state, the legislature has at times looked at funds and taken funds from other programs to use for operational expenses. And one of the concerns there is some of those local or those revenue matters like marijuana and liquor have been used for general state operational expenses. Right now, we've held steady, which is good news. Sometimes the holding steady in difficult times is a success, and they did not raid those funds to any greater degree than they had last year, so that's good news. Another fund that was looked at heavily by the legislature and relied upon by the legislature in its budget that it passed this year is the Public Works Assistance Account. Long-time fund that's been used by local governments for low-income loans, great repayment record. The program works well. But about $154 million was relied upon by the legislature to balance that four-year budget. The governor vetoed that piece of the budget, so that did not gut the program like we feared. But make no mistake, that program is under pressure and will continue to be under pressure as we look forward in the years ahead. So it's something we work on very closely for the city. Next one, criminal justice and social services funding. One of the issues that came up here that relates to something that you were talking about this afternoon, the homeless issue and the homeless crisis, which you've been very focused on and dedicated on. The capital budget included about $6 million for 4 projects, including one of which was a 22 North project. So whether or not that's $1 million, $1.5 million, it's unclear, but it's great news that 22 North program is in there. And some other programs, operational programs related to that area of concern and interest and support. A couple bills passed. One to increase mental health services to youth and children. That was 2439. One passed 1713, increased access to chemical dependency treatment. And there's also some additional funding in the supplemental operating budget for the Western State Hospital, about $41 million in new money. And then one more I wanted to mention to you, and then Ben's going to address a few. The paid safe and sick leave vacation, paid safe and sick leave legislation. That did not pass in and of itself. However, I think part of the reason is because the minimum wage bill also didn't pass, and I think there was a reluctance by the legislature across the board to act on that when there was going to almost certainly be an initiative on the ballot this fall. The signatures have not been turned in yet, but it's anticipated. I think it's Initiative 1433 will be on the ballot, and that does include a paid safe and sick leave provision in it. So I think that's good to think about as we move forward. And I don't want to be remiss here. I thank the City Council for its support and involvement in Olympia, and of course the mayor is deeply involved in Olympia as well. I want to thank her as well for that. It's critically important. Ben's going to hit some of the other issues that we know are important to you, and then we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thanks for having us today. It's great to see all of you guys again. I noticed the crowds left when it came up to our time, so that's pretty fitting, actually. So Tom was, as you know, very nice in the way that he put it in his opening remarks about next session. I'm a little bit more blunt about things, and frankly, it's going to be a really long session next year. It's going to be a couple extra ones. Staff and leadership have told us that they're planning on being there at least until July 1st and probably a little bit later, depending on the makeup of the chambers after November elections. So, we just want to make sure that, like I say, Tom's a little less blunt about it, but that's what we're hearing from staff and leadership. So be prepared for a really, really long, lots of legislative reports every week next summer. When you're out in the sun, you'll have some good reading material. So to touch briefly on some major issues we talked about in our legislative preview and on your legislative objectives for session. Transportation funding, last year that was a big win for the city of Bellingham and Whatcom County in general. That hasn't changed at all. Still a lot of positive funding for our projects. Orchard Street, to name one, and the Baker interchange, to name another. That's a 16-year funding plan, so some of those numbers are still sort of hypothetical when and where they will be spent, but we're in there and they're coming. That's all I can say at some point. So that's a very positive piece. Rail safety, that was another major issue from last year and is very important to the area, obviously. The ink still hadn't dried on that one, so the rulemaking process is taking place this summer. Ecology is looking for public input on the legislation that passed last year for rail safety. So this session, there was no new rail safety legislation of any major kind, which is probably a good thing given how major the piece was last year that passed, and we want to make sure we get that right. So nothing new on the rail safety front this session. Homelessness funding, and public housing funding. Really, if there was one common theme for this session, it was emergency funding, taking care of the homeless, social services that are emergencies, and then the other piece to that for the Eastern Washington wildfires. Those were sort of the major issues that had to be taken care of and funded immediately. So you can dice up the homelessness funding and public housing a lot of different directions. There's several figures you'll see from AWC staff or from us or from the legislative staff, but when you cut it down, about $110 million is new funding towards homelessness projects and public housing. And it's difficult to say exactly where all that money is going, right down to the name of the project or which facilities. But like I say, it's at least 110 million, and we've seen some figures as high as 200, but it's closer to 110 of new funding just this session put towards homelessness care. So that's a positive step in the right direction. And next year, I'm sure we'll see a considerable amount of work on that issue again. Aquatic invasive species, the Senate bill 6162 moved this session. It was passed. It was also of note one of the 27 bills that the governor vetoed in order to try and push negotiations along a little bit faster. But we were grateful when, in the end, both chambers ended up overriding that veto, and it again passed the legislature and became law immediately. That extends the expiration date on the Aquatic Invasive Species Council until 2022. It didn't change the funding at all, and like I said, AIS wasn't considered an emergency need, so there wasn't additional funding for our area. We've had conversations with the senator that's spearheading getting more money for AIS, and we're looking for next year. So MRSC, Municipal Research Services Center, as you guys know, there was a lot of chatter towards the end of session. That funding had been, for those services had been completely cut out of the budget, about 1.9 or 2 million. And I know several of you, at least 2 of you, sent emails regarding that funding, and the mayor also sent a note to those that needed to hear about it. And in the final budget, it was fully replenished and fully funded at its previous level. So fortunately, a lot of us got involved on that one. It was a large coalition between AWC staff, mayors across the state, and county folks, and fortunately we were able to save that, because that would have been a huge hit to those services. And then finally, just wanted to mention there was a lot of work done on the solar tax incentive program, which is vital to at least a couple companies here and across the state, a big chunk. The delegation from these districts were fantastic, very supportive, but when it came right down to it, it was a tough sell in the Senate Republican chambers in leadership and some House leadership folks. It was a difficult conversation. It almost got there on the last day of session, and it didn't, but it wasn't for a lack of effort on everybody's part. And so I'll sort of leave you with that great news that it ended up not making it across the finish line. But that there's always next year for that one. So hopefully something can happen there. But I think that's about it for me. Questions from anybody?
Councilmember Lillquist, then Hamel.
Thanks, Ben and Tom. So earlier today, we were presented with a list of 6 projects that were green-lighted. We're funded with MATCA funds totaling $3.6 million, and that was our local hit when the funding was withdrawn. So first of all, help me understand, there were reductions in the MATCA funding. How much of that was due? Was there any new sweep of those funds, or is it entirely due to declining revenues into the fund? And that goes to whether or not these may be on permanent vacation and never come back, or come back.
That's well said, actually. You put that quite nicely. But you touched on 2 pieces of what's happened to MACA. One are the oil prices. That's been a huge hit to the fund. But the second one, which is the more major side of it, is the sweep. And I don't think there were new sweeps this year, but the continued sweep of that fund over the past 5 years, 10 years, has finally started to show the pressure against the funding. And it has started to create a large problem in the shortfall now because of declining oil prices. So it's sort of been exacerbated by the fact that oil prices are coming down, but the legislature sees that as a pot of money that's sitting there, and it's not being spent fast enough, so let's sweep it and use it for something else. So you basically answered your own question. They've been sweeping it and lower oil prices.
I didn't like my answer, though.
Nobody did.
I'm just trying to have a better understanding of what the objections were around local investments in solar generation.
Well, in the end, the conversation came down to the fact that it was somewhat of a large chunk of money for a few amount of jobs. But like I say, that the entire issue was supported by your delegation very well, and I can't tell you how close it came on the last day of getting that across the line. There was a large group of folks lobbying for that, and it was sort of surprising the mix of legislators that just couldn't vote for that. It wasn't I said earlier, a Senate Republican issue, but it wasn't just that caucus. It was spread out throughout the legislature, and I just don't think. I think part of what you saw happen this session was limited amounts of money for emergency funding, and you kept hearing in every conversation it had to be an emergency. April was down there for a day with us, and every conversation we had, it was like, well, if it's not related to wildfires or homeless funding or public housing in some sort, it just wasn't going to get funded. And unfortunately, that's exactly where this issue fell.
Part of it is we didn't go into too much detail on the budget, but you're talking about a $38.2 billion 2-year budget. Revenues since last June are up $270 million. That's good news. But the continuing maintenance level cost of state government operations exceed that right there. So while the economy is much stronger than it was before, revenues are up, we're not keeping up with the cost of the state operations. So you're already in the hole to begin with. Then you put on top of it what Ben just described, what the legislature is willing to change, even in a long session year where you're developing a biennial budget. But this was a short session year, 60-day session, supplemental budget. They look at it as tweaks to the program, emergent situations. It was very difficult to get their attention on it.
Council members, any other questions, comments?
I just wanted to extend the thank you. I was down there with like saucer eyes. That was my first time being, and Ben greeted me. He was great, and I actually learned some ways to guide discussion from you. So I really appreciated that. It's great.
Council members? No? Mayor Kelly.
Well, I want to just thank the council members for participating. It makes a difference, I think Ben and Tom have both said. And I also want to thank Tom and Ben. They have a lot of respect down at the Capitol, and that's good for us. So when they go and talk to people, they are listened to, and that's I'm really glad we hired them. I'm really glad we
Me too.
hired you.
Thank
Yeah, I know you are.
Tom and Ben, thank you so much for coming down here, and we appreciate your advocacy for us down in the legislature. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, and we're on our last item of Committee of the Whole today. This is a discussion of the draft comment letters regarding oil transport by rail. Staff will present 2 draft letters related to the rulemaking activity undertaken by the Washington State Department of Ecology. The comment letters pertain to oil transport by rail and oil spill contingency plans. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian Heinrich, our Deputy Administrator.
Good afternoon. In the packet, you'll find the 2 draft letters. I included both under one cover. The first letter is with respect to oil transport by rail and actually pipeline on that specific proposed rule. I identified 2 comments, and I included the rule in its entirety, and I apologize for the layout of how they're attached in there. So if you had a chance to review that particular proposed rule, the 2 areas I identified wanted to talk about today were the advance notice on facility requirements, so asking that they include the number of railroad cars delivering crude, and I will admit that the sentence there probably won't win any awards, so I'd like to rework that. And then the second specific comment, I just want to make sure that we're not, we only have to request once, our emergency management folks, so that they're not continually having to request for notification, and that Ecology will manage it. And I included there either a clearinghouse or at least a database, so that once we make a request, we're always going to be, it will always receive those notifications. Any questions or comments about that particular letter? And I am looking for, it certainly doesn't have to be today, but I will be looking for direction to proceed with these comment letters.
Council members?
Looks good to me.
Oh,
Move approval.
That's great.
So the second letter, thank you very much, is on contingency plan. So part of the legislation that's proposed would require the railroad to have a contingency plan that they share with various stakeholders. And the specific comment there on the section is it lists state, federal, tribal, and I'm forgetting someone else, but I wanted to call attention that I'd like them to acknowledge that the local agencies have a stake in this, and that they include us in that list of people they will notify or at least share the contingency plan. And then and that follows into the next comment is they don't articulate how that will be shared, so I'm looking to ask them to provide those details on how they share that and perhaps who they share that with.
Council members, any questions, comments? Councilmember Lillquist.
These are excellent letters. If you're going to be rewriting anything, that one about including local officials and notification, I don't know if you could just make a slightly stronger sentence on that.
I will.
Just
Yeah,
really
thank you
critical.
for that. I'm sorry, Michael.
No, it's really critical. It's such an important point, and it'd be nice if they just couldn't miss that point.
I was looking at that earlier today, and I thought, boy, I really ought to add some reasoning why we want to be included in that. So I will certainly strengthen that.
Council members? Mayor Kelly.
On page 70, there is a list of the planning points. And when I went down to Skagit County with the meeting that Maria Cantwell had last year, that was an issue that Roger,
Christensen.
That guy, that Roger Christensen, when he was our emergency manager, made to the group, which is instead of having everything located in one spot and then having to disperse it after there was a problem, to keep equipment dispersed along the route. And I notice it's included in the new section. So, so he was successful in getting that in, which makes a lot of sense. So now we'll have our contingency equipment closer to us, which is a good thing.
Councilmember Lillquist.
Well, I'll just go ahead and move that we approve joining in these letters, including the fact that there may be slight non-substantive changes to improve the language.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion in front of us to approve these 2 draft letters with amendments that may come. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Brian.
Great
These
job.
are excellent. Okay, items for old or new business. Oh, minutes, geez, look at me. Okay, we have 2 minutes in front of us today. The first one is for a retreat, which happened on April 16th, 2016.
Move approval.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. The second set of minutes is for our committee meeting on April 18th.
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Okay, now we will move to old or new business. Councilmember Murphy.
So it was really interesting that our lobbyists brought forward information about paid and safe sick leave because that's some older new business that I wanted to briefly discuss. So yes, Initiative 1433 is going on right now. The reason signatures haven't been provided yet to the state is because signatures are not due until the end of June.
Get as many as you can.
So what I will be bringing forward at our May 16th council meeting is just a resolution to see if council members will be willing to support that initiative. And the initiative is to get paid and safe sick leave and then also a gradual raise of the minimum wage on the Washington state ballot for all Washington state voters to consider.
Good idea.
Council members? Councilmember Hamel.
I just wanted to provide council with an update from today's Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force meeting. So there was a vote to adopt the recommendations of the triage ad hoc committee, and those I just want to provide those recommendations to you. These will go to county council. The task force is recommending 2 16-bed triage units joined in one building off of a common foyer. One of the units is for acute detoxification. The other unit is for triage of mental health illness crisis. The recommendation is that the facility be a voluntary unit with enhancements, which means that the doors do lock, but the residents are encouraged to stay by the staff. If there is an issue with a person who's becoming assaulted, that the police would be called or sheriffs would be called. The location options in order of priority were the current triage facility located on Division Street property. Second choices were location near St. Joseph Peace Health Medical Center, and then downtown Bellingham. And that's my update.
Councilmember Warner.
Yeah, this is just slightly old business because it kind of relates to our discussion on the municipal parks district. In terms of talking with Seth, we was reminded that when the Greenways made their presentation, they were asking for a resolution in May about whether we're going forward with the Greenways. So we have one more meeting in May, so I would request that we have that be on for us to make a decision whether we're going forward with them or not, so that they can have the adequate time to prepare for this, or not prepare for it.
That's fair.
Second.
Yeah.
Clarification. Do you want that prepared, Terry?
So
you take action on it, or are you?
I would ask, yeah, so I'll make a motion that staff prepare a resolution for that for our next meeting.
Second.
You're new, it'll take time.
Okay, we have a motion in front of us to put the Greenways levy consideration. Is that? Prepare a resolution. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Prepare a resolution for the Greenways Committee levy 4. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Anything else for old or new business? Okay. All right, we are going to go into an executive session. Executive sessions are closed to the public. There's a report on the regular meeting tonight. There is one executive session, a potential litigation claim number 2015-50, be approximately 15 minutes. And I will be back here to adjourn at 20 minutes to 5.